This is how Jack Hanma lives his life outside of fighting and training in the Baki story, in this small apartment that clearly is not clean, filled with his various steroids, and has pretty much always been like this since the start of Jack's life. We saw in chapter 2 of Baki Rahen that he lived seemingly at the bottom of the church. Then in all the flashbacks during the early days of Baki, we see him in similar apartments back when he lived in Canada. Also other locations that weren't too good, highlighting that throughout the entirety of Jack's life, who as a reminder is in fact older than Baki Hanma, he hasn't really had like a good time to any degree, dedicating himself to the training, getting stronger, his ultimate goal since the very beginning to become the strongest creature alive. Very different to pretty much every character throughout the Baki series, even his brother Baki, who yes, in the early days when he was 13 had a very rough time, being abused by his mother and then the various torture from Yujiro throughout the majority of his life. But when he was around 17 and 18, he was going to high school, he had a girlfriend, and throughout the series, Baki has had some good times here and there, but we can't really say we've seen that from the likes of Jack Hanma. Even looking at the various other characters, they have stuff going for them outside of training and getting stronger. Doppo Orochi is this legendary karate master with dojos all across Japan. Retsu is this legendary Chinese Kempo master before he died, who had that whole span of time becoming a world famous boxer. And a similar thing for various other characters, except for Jack Hanma, which is kinda sad to realize. Even the doctor who looked after him for a number of years most likely and had given him those super steroids to begin with, ended his own life due to how much of a monster Jack Hanma had became. But now in current Baki Rahen, we are seeing the build up of the next fight, Hanayama vs the Biting Cyborg. Welcome to my breakdown of Baki Rahen chapter 38. So we begin with the continued conversation between Baki and Hanayama after the Yakuza boy left the arena upon approaching the injured Jack who just defeated Pickle. We had Baki in the previous chapter mention, or you could say warn Hanayama that this is a holy war against Jack Hanma. Now in the start of this chapter, we see the leader of the Yakuza being, I guess, a bit Sigma to a degree, saying Baki is wrong about his perspective on those two, which does make Baki laugh, but even with the comeback, Hanayama still isn't buying it, highlighting that there's more to this matchup, more to Hanayama as a fighter, likewise for Jack as well. So that is pretty interesting when you consider that we see later in this chapter that Hanayama had actually gifted Jack this feud, likely for the case of recovering, getting full strength for the battle, where we're gonna see hopefully a monstrous version of Hanayama throughout that. But outside of that cool moment with insane art from Itagaki, absolutely goated stuff, we have Kosho and Tokigawa talking a little bit about Jack. As a reminder, Kosho is pretty much the one that currently looks after Jack Hanma, likely providing the steroids, the one who has performed all the height lengthening surgeries. During the days of the Maximum Tournament, he was trying to save Jack from killing himself with the abuse he was doing on his body. Since then, they seemingly have become quite close, but even him has to accept that Jack's pathway, the Gaodao, the way of the biting, is quite lame, and we have a few panels of Tokigawa and him shitting on it quite a bit, which is actually what a large portion of the fandom do about Jack. It's fair to do that, and I'm glad Itagaki addresses this and highlights very often that many of the characters view it like this, which again it comes back to Jack's character, him willing to do anything for the sake of gaining power, even the likes of biting, why he is in fact goated in many ways. But an interesting thing we get from these two is when Tokigawa, of course the ultimate instigator, says who he has between Jack and Hanihama when it comes to the fight, where he says this: two great men with opposite ideologies, although when you get down to it, in their thinking, in their integrity, they're incredibly similar, which is something Tokigawa agrees with, building up this fight even more, which is cool to see. But with this official build-up chapter for their fight, we need to address some things pointed out by you mad lads in the comments on my previous video, such as this one. Injured Jack would still destroy Hanayama. The only way Hanayama wins if Jack heavily nerfs himself and gets caught off guard several times. A key aspect to remember is Jack claimed in a few chapters ago when Hanayama first pulled up in the arena that he would be able to defeat him without the use of biting, meaning solely his martial arts, the grappling, the German suplexes, his incredible striking. That is enough to defeat Hanayama from Jack's perspective, which is in fact a major nerf, as Jack's Gaodao is a big counter for Hanayama and his fighting style. A majority of fighters face issues when going up against Jack's martial art, but if he isn't using that, that's where characters do have an advantage, especially in the long run. As soon as Jack lands a bite and the bleeding out aspect comes into play, Jack can slowly whittle down his opponent. But if he isn't doing that at all, that's where it could go either way. I don't know if that aspect is still on the table, that Jack is not going to be biting when they do fight. We'll have to wait and see, but it was mentioned already in the story, which is in fact a nerf to a degree. But you can't forget that Hanayama, while having some unfortunate moments throughout the series, does get highlighted as one of the biggest monsters here and there, and is of course one of the most respected and without a doubt strongest when he wants to in the series, resulting in this fight likely to be much closer than a lot of people are expecting. And I wouldn't be surprised if the likes of Hanayama is portrayed much better than Pickle, and we're going to have a lot of people in the fandom ranking him above the Dino Boy after this fight. But now some unfortunate news: Baki Rahan is once again on break, returning on the 20th of February. And if you guys didn't know, this chapter has been out for a few days, but the translation team, these goated mad lads, have announced that for the preceding future, they will be taking a little bit more time to translate the chapters, as they don't get the chapter early these days anymore, meaning we're going to have the Raws for a few days most likely until the translations come out. Of course, join the Discord for chapter links, as when the draws drop, they're posted in there. Likewise for the translation chapter, link in the description. I also have this recently uploaded breakdown of the top 10 strongest in the most detail I've ever done in a video. Make sure to check out that one right here on screen now. Also, shout out to these members, the absolute mad lads. Thanks for all the support.